There's heroes, and there's villains. Masters of manipulation and mayhem, the incarnate of pure evil and malice. Destroying cities like it was a walk in the park, and killing off humans day in and day out, such like breathing air, killing off a few bugs. These are common themes in what a villain is in media today. But how do you write the perfect villain? And what's the difference between a level 1 crook and a level 100 mafia boss? Also, this video will have some anime and manga spoilers for those who might not have watched everything in the book, so keep that in mind. Okay, and just to get this out of the way, I'm going to be saying villain for a very specific reason. The reason I'm going to say villain is because not all villains need to be the antagonist. Antagonist is someone who opposes the protagonist, which would be the main character. And there are some stories, such as Taina and the Evil, Attack on Titan, if we look at the lives of normal people, and such as like the boys with Homelander. Those are all main characters, but they are demonly evil. So they would be seen as villains. But that does not make them the antagonist. Whoever opposes them, because they are the main characters, they would be the antagonist. Alright, so let's dig in. One of the most important things about a character is the introduction and how other characters perceive them. This is especially significant for building up suspense and this mysterious aura around the character. We, as the viewers, will start to probably get excited for whenever we finally get to see this character. We're like, man, this is the person everyone was talking about. For example, Itachi from Naruto. Everyone and their mama was glazing this man to the end of this earth. You'd hear Sasuke talk about it. You'd hear Kakashi talk about it. You'd hear everyone talk about Itachi. Sasuke even hated his brother, but this built a strong foundation for the character early on in the story. We already knew he was strong. We already knew that he killed his entire clan single-handedly, but we didn't know his motive. That built that mysterious factor for us. Another example would be someone like All For One from My Hero Academia. We already knew that he was once Japan's most powerful villain and even rivaled All Might, which we already know that All Might was the strongest hero ever. So if he has power to rival him, and their names sound kinda similar, we already know he's gonna be strong. That builds suspense in many different ways, like what does he look like, what's his powers, and how strong is he really? Okay, so now that we've gotten a good introduction that will build suspense and should add that sense of fear or respect to the main cast, making that clear distinction between the villain and the protagonist clear early on, we can move on with the next point. A strong background and a good purpose. Now these two might arguably just be the most important part of any character, villain or not. Having a good, strong origin story and a stronger purpose and motive makes a good character into a S-tier character. A good example of this would be someone like Obito Uchiha. Obito has a powerful backstory and motive. First dying to protect his friends, then somehow surviving just to train and see your best friend kill your loved one. After that, training some more to see your perfect world where no one's loved ones ever die again, and failing at the end. That is one of the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching motives in all of Naruto, and maybe of all of fiction. A strong motive like that and a stronger backstory like that really builds up his character. Another example of this with a less strong background, but a really strong motive, would be someone like Light Yagami. His background is average at best. He's literally the definition of an average high schooler with an even higher IQ. But his motive compromises that for a lot. At first, he's just an average high schooler, as stated before, who finds a random book, kind of confusing. But when he finds his book, his motive grows. We see it develop in the story how, in the beginning, he's just killing off a few prisoners, seeing if it really works. At the end, wanting to become a god amongst others, killing off all injustices and only keeping those he found fit. Now, even though these two have very strong motives and backstories, Some characters tend to, bend the rules a little bit, such as Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen. To be honest, if you asked me what's Sukuna's backstory, I'd be like, I don't know, he might be from the Heian era. Well, what about his motive? Well, I wouldn't even know that for myself. I'm pretty sure the only thing that makes Sukuna Sukuna is killing innocent people and making Yuji suffer. I wouldn't call these the strongest motives in the world, but they're motives nonetheless. But why would he be considered one of the best villains of New Gen if that was all? Well, that was his power to make people hate him or love him for, those weirdos out there. He makes your favorite characters die left and right. And that really makes some readers' heart just crushed. That makes a good villain. Someone who can be hated. Now, in my personal ideology of what the perfect villain would be, something like this where he's just pure evil for fun wouldn't really fit that category, but when done right, it still makes a really good villain. I often find that the best villains are someone who usually has a motive, a distinct, specific motive purely to them that they find fit for that character and they stick with it throughout the story. That leads me to my next point. Staying consistent with the character's ideology makes a massive difference. The villain should be willing to do basically anything for their perfect goal. Someone like Johan from Monster is a very good example of this. Throughout the story, we can see how far he's really willing to go just to achieve his dream, manipulating others, committing crimes, and pretty much anything else he deems necessary to achieve it. A necessary evil, in a sense. To add on to that, making them have a good purpose, but taking it to the extreme works miracles in these type of stories. Think of Thanos. He just wanted to solve overpopulation as it deemed to be a very big threat in the galaxy. But he was willing to go an extra mile just to make that happen. The correlation between heroes and villains is also very important. The hero and villain should have some deeper contrast and parallel between them other than the fact that one is good and one is evil. One of the best examples of this would be Miram from Hunter x Hunter. The contrast and parallel of Miram to Gon may seem very subtle or even non-existent at first, but it is there. Their introduction alone shows that Gon thinks that insects are trash because they don't really care about each other, and Miram kills humans because humans kill each other, so he thinks his is justified. Gon becomes more heartless throughout the arc, while Miram becomes softer and wants to actually protect humans. Complete yin and yang. There are a plethora of more parallels between the characters, but for now that does fine. This clear understanding of the two characters can make all the difference as it adds that sense of depth that can't really be compared to any other topic listed so far. Last but not least would be making them relatable in some way, shape, or form. Having a character be relatable is a very strong ability that only some can really draw out. Putting that into a villain sense makes the character become much more defined. But do not make them be relatable to the point where they aren't hated. Make them be hated for pursuing their goals in an evil or unjustful way. That is adding the cherry on top. Villains don't do evil just for the sake of being evil. They have a reason for it that can rationalize their actions. Your reader should be able to understand why a villain does something and put themselves in their shoes. Don't make the action justifiable, but make them understandable. So as a little recap, we went over an introduction, a strong introduction, strong background, and a good motive, making sure their ideals don't waver, adding a sense of depth between the hero and the villain, and making them relatable. So who is the villain that is closest to being what I deem as the perfect written villain? Well, some of you guys may have guessed it by now by adding all the points together, but if you didn't, it would be none other than... Well, we already knew that he was the founding leader of a mercenary unit of the Band of Hawks, so we know that he is at least powerful. Then we find out he is friends with the main character, which adds that compelling parallel between them. When we look at his backstory, we see he has a strong, noble, reliable, and justifiable goal. He just wants to get out of the slums and become more powerful. Nothing too extreme. He was just a very poor boy who dreamed big. It's profound in its own sort of way. Many dream of that, but the way he goes about it becomes unjustifiable, where he becomes a villain. His correlation and parallel to Guts and what he does to him as his best friend is diabolical and is seen as morally evil, pushing it further to the extreme past redemption. Seeing their story unravel to see that he would do anything to achieve his goal with no remorse easily became one of the most hated characters of all in fiction.
There is one thing I can do for them. It is to win, and keep winning until I attain my dream. My dream is already smeared with blood. I don't regret, I don't feel guilty, but I'd rather sacrifice myself than watch any more innocent children die in the name of my dream.
Now, this is a little bit different than my usual content, as my usual content has something to do with art, but this is kind of targeted to the artists who want to make their own stories, such as myself, to give them a little bit of motivation and a little insight on how to make a good character. Nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed, and we are so close to hitting 100 subscribers. I can't believe it. Out of only like a couple of videos, this is actually insane. Thank you all for the recent support and love. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button so we reach 100, and comment down below if you want more like this or my old content. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good day.